Hi, second grade. Time for Charlotte's Web, chapter 17. Also, it was great seeing all of you yesterday at the Zoom. Thank you guys so much. I really wanted to see your faces, your smiling faces, and I got to see all of them. So thank you so much. Chapter 17 is called Uncle. When they pulled into the fairgrounds, they could hear the music. They could see the Ferris wheel turning in the sky. They could smell the dust of the racetrack where the horses ran. And they could smell hamburgers frying and a clown selling balloons. They could hear sheep in their pens, and an enormous voice over the loudspeaker said, "Attention, please. Will the owner of a Pontiac car, license H2439, please move your car? You are too close to where we're going to shoot off the fireworks." "Hey, can I have some money?" asked Fern. "Can I too?" asked Avery. "I'm going to win a doll by spinning a wheel, and if it stops on the right number, that's the prize I'll win," said Fern. "I'm going to steer a jet plane and make it bump into one another on one of the rides." "Can I buy a balloon?" asked Fern. "Can I have some custard and a cheeseburger and some raspberry soda pop?" asked Avery. "You children, please stop until we get everything done. Our first priority is to get the pig unloaded," said Mrs. Arble. "Why don't we just let the children go off by themselves?" suggested Mr. Arble. "The fair only comes once a year, and then we'll be able to get the pig unloaded with more peace and quiet." Mr. Arble gave Fern two quarters and 2 dimes. He gave Avery 5 dimes and 4 nickels. "Now run along," he said, "and remember the money has to last you all day, so don't spend it in one place. And be back here to the truck at noon so we can all eat lunch together. And don't eat a lot of junk. It's going to make you have belly aches. And if you go to the swing," said Mrs. Arble, "hang on tight, very tight. Do you understand?" "And don't get lost," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "And don't even get dirty. And don't get too hot. And watch out for people that might take your money. And don't run across the racetrack if the horses are coming." The children had too many things they were being told. They just grabbed each other's hand and ran off towards the merry-go-round, towards the music. It was all so wonderful. It was a wonderful adventure and wonderful excitement and a wonderful fair. And no parents to tell them what to do and where they should be. They were just happy and free. Mrs. Arble stood quietly and watched them go, and then she took a deep breath, and then she blew her nose. "Do you really think it's okay for them to go off by themselves?" she asked. "Well, they have to grow up sometime," said Mr. Arble, "and a fair's a good place to start, I guess." While Wilbur was being unloaded and taken out of his crate into the new pig pen, the crowds gathered to watch. They stared at the sign, "Zuckerman's Famous Pig." Wilbur stared back and tried to look extra good. He was pleased with his new home. The pen was grassy and shaded by the sun by a roof. Charlotte was watching for her chance, and she scrambled out of the crate, climbed up the post to the underside of the roof, and no one even noticed her. Templeton, not wishing to come out in the daylight, stayed quietly under the straw at the bottom of the crate. Mr. Zuckerman poured some milk into Wilbur's trough, pitched some clean straw into his pen, and then he and Mr. Zuckerman and the Arbles walked away towards the cattle barn to look at the cows and to see all the other animals. Mr. Zuckerman particularly wanted to look at some tractors. Mrs. Zuckerman wanted to go look and see if there were homemade pies for the pie contest. And Lurvy wandered off by himself, hoping to meet some friends and have fun as he walked around. As soon as the people were gone, Charlotte spoke to Wilbur. "It's a good thing you can't see what I see," she said. "Why? What do you see?" asked Wilbur. "There's a pig in the next pen, and he is enormous. I'm afraid he's much bigger than you are." "Well, maybe he's older than I am. Maybe he's had more time to grow bigger," suggested Wilbur. But tears came to his eyes. "I'll drop down and take a look at him," said Charlotte. She crawled along the beam until she was directly over the next pen. She let herself down and dragged until she hung in the air just in front of the big pig's snout. "May I have your name?" she asked politely. The pig stared at her. "No name. I've never been named. I just go by Uncle." "Very well, Uncle," replied Charlotte. "What's the date of your birth? Were you born in the spring?" "Sure, I'm a spring pig," replied Uncle. "What do you think? I'm a spring chicken?" "Ha ha 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 ha." That's a good joke, isn't it? Just mildly funny," said Charlotte. "I've heard funnier jokes, though. I'm glad to have met you, and now I must be going." She ascended slowly and returned to Wilbur's pen. "He claims he's a spring pig," reported Charlotte. "And perhaps he is. One thing's certain, he has the most unattractive personality. He's too familiar, too noisy, and he cracked a bad joke. Also, he's not anywhere near as clean as you are, nor as pleasant. I took a quite dislike to him in our brief interview. He's going to be a hard pig to beat, though, Wilbur, on account of his size and his weight. But I think with me helping you, we can win first prize." "When are you going to spin your next web?" asked Wilbur. "This afternoon, if I'm not too tired," she answered. The least thing tires me out these days. I just don't have energy that I once had. I think it's because of my age." Wilbur looked at his friend, and she looked rather swollen and seemed listless. "I'm awfully sorry that you're feeling so poorly, Charlotte," Wilbur said. "Perhaps if you spin a web and catch some flies, you'll feel better." "Perhaps," she said wearily, "but I feel like the end of a long day." Clinging upside down to the ceiling, she settled down for a nap. She left Wilbur worrying. All morning people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers popped in to stare at him and to admire his silky white coat, his curly tail, and his kind, radiant expression. Then they would move on to the next pen, the pen where the big pig laid. Wilbur heard several people make good remarks about Uncle's great size. He couldn't help overhearing the remarks, and he couldn't help worrying about them. And now, with Charlotte not feeling well, "Oh dear," he thought. All morning Templeton slept quietly under the straw. The day grew furiously hot. And at noon, the Zuckermans and the Arbles returned to the pig pen. And then a few minutes later, Fern and Avery showed up. Fern had a monkey doll in her arms and was eating some Cracker Jacks. Avery had a balloon tied to his ear and was chewing on a candied apple. The children were hot and dirty. "Isn't it hot?" said Mrs. Zuckerman. "It's terribly hot," said Mrs. Arble, fanning herself with an advertisement. One by one, they climbed in the truck and opened their lunch boxes. The sun beat down on everything. Nobody was even hungry to eat. "When are the judges going to decide who the winning pig is?" asked Mrs. Zuckerman. "That doesn't happen till tomorrow," said Mr. Zuckerman. Lurvy appeared carrying a blanket that he had won. "Yeah, that's just what we need," said Avery, "a blanket." "Of course it is," replied Lurvy. He spread the blanket out across the bottom of the truck so that it was a little place where they all could sit. The children sat down on the blanket and felt better. After lunch, they stretched out on the blanket in the truck and fell asleep. That's the end. There are some pictures. Let me go back to the beginning. Here's a picture of Fern and Avery walking around at the fair. Here's a picture of the big pig next door named Uncle and Charlotte talking to him. It's kind of cute. And my question for today is, I want to know how much money Fern and Avery received from their parents to spend at the fair. So I'm just going to read it to you again, and if you want to message me on Dojo or Seesaw, it would be great. It said Mrs. Arble gave Fern 2 quarters, 2 dimes. So that's what she gave Fern. How much is that? And Avery received 5 dimes and 4 nickels. So if you can let me know what Fern received and what Avery received, that'd be great. I will know that you still remember how to count money, which we learned about earlier in the school year. So we are done, and I will read on Monday, because today's Friday. So Monday I will read chapter 18, The Cool of the Evening. Have a good weekend, second grade.